But let's move on now to speaker number 3. And I'm very pleased to welcome Aurora Cecilia Aguilar, who's a reader in physics in the School of Science and Engineering at the University of Dundee. Aurora works in the field of star formation and protoplanetary disks. And Aurora is part of an STFC-funded public engagement project entitled Reading Between the Lines, Translating Light from Science to Art. And if I'm not reading between the lines too much, I'm hoping we're going to hear more about that project in Aurora's presentation. So over to you.
So thank you very much for the introduction. What I'm going to talk about is different kind of projects of public engagement that we are doing at the University of Dundee. And as you can see here below, these projects actually involve quite a lot of people. And this includes a cross-section of astrophysicists like myself, but also artists, art curators, other physicists, and also the physics undergrad students. And we are trying to involve them also into doing public engagement and outreach, and so that they can learn how nice it is and how much you can get from that. So then, so the main issue that we were thinking about in the initially is that very often when you are doing a public engagement event at a science related place and it's labeled as a science public engagement, you maybe actually end up preaching to the converted, in the sense that the people that show up, for instance, when we go to the Mills Observatory, they are going to be people who are already interested to some extent in science. So what can you do if you want to actually attract people who may not really be so keen and to coming to an event that is just labeled as science to start with? And then what we are trying to do is to involve other disciplines. So we have an art science collaboration, which is a reading between the lines that was mentioned before. And we are also trying to find what are the common points among other disciplines, which includes also working with the Duncan of Georgetown College of Art and Design and the physics department in Dundee, and also involving the undergrad students who are very often more able to communicate with younger people than older academics. So about the art and science public engagement project that we have, this is called Reading Between the Lines, and the subtitle that we have is Translating Light from Science to Art, where the translation is not only that we are trying to communicate things in a different way that is more accessible to people, it's also featuring part of what we are doing for science, which is we are doing time-resolved spectroscopy, which involves moving light in space as well as using time to map places that may not be accessible in another way. So the artists that we are working with, they are called Semiconductor. They are an artist duo, and they have a big experience working with other partners in physics and science. So they have been working with CERN. They have been also working with geologists and other people. And what we wanted to do was to bring the science that we are doing initially for our STFC research project, which is trying to understand young stars and how they form. And then later on, with the grant that we got from Spark, a public engagement grant, try to bring it to a public that may not be so excited by science at first. So you can see here the artists that work in their workshop. So what we are trying to do is not just to get an artist representation of the final thing that we are getting in our research, which is usually understanding the structure around a star, but we are also trying to make the public participate of the entire process, which involves analyzing time-resolved data, analyzing spectra, which include information on wavelength or color and temperature, and also time information. So they are working to produce some displays that give you a different way of visualizing the same data that we are using in our research. So I don't know if you will see the video moving, but I don't see it moving, so it's a funny thing. But this is part of the work in progress that Semiconductor is doing for Reading Between the Lines. There are going to be several panels of that are essentially trying to capture what our time-resolved data of spectroscopy that includes different colors, includes time signal, trying to capture this and making it visually possible to visualize it in a different way from what we usually see. This part of the work is going to consist of several panels, and they are going to be presented at the Neon Digital Art Festival, which is taking place in Dundee in person in November. So you are welcome to come over and have a look at that. So this is on one side of the art science collaboration, but the other part that we are doing public engagement is to try to involve the undergrad students into public engagement as well. And then this is actually a very interesting thing for them because it's a lot, it requires a different set of skills to be able to explain something to people who will not be able to use the same kind of equations, and they will not have the same background that what you have in university. So we created initially the Student Science Fair that was taking place at the Mills Observatory in Dundee. And the first time we ran it, it was a success. We had there the physics and the astrophysics students presenting different things with more or less complicated setup. Sometimes you just need a blanket and a couple of balls to explain about how space gets deformed by matter. And this was really a lot of fun. All the students said that they were having really a lot of fun. We also have created in Dundee the the Equate Student Champion, who is also having the role of promoting the participation of women in science. So that was the first year that we did it. And then we went on to the second year and we had prepared everything very nicely. That was 2020. And then we had everything ready for March and then we went in lockdown. So we couldn't do anything in place, because then we decided, okay, if we can't go in place, we can go online. And several of the students created activities that we displayed in an online science fair. Some of them created videos, and you can find really wonderful videos in YouTube, such as a Map in the Universe video, and also the Star Wars.
We've just lost Aurora. I guess let's just give it a moment to see if we get Aurora back.
And then I hope, yeah, I don't know if it kicked me out at some point. Or I'm sharing my screen again.
You were just telling us about the online Science Festival, and actually you got kicked out just as you mentioned Star Wars, which I was
then it must be the dark side is attacking me anyway. But yeah, so the Star Wars girls, they produced a wonderful video about the physics or the lack of physics behind Star Wars. And then so that was 2020, and then in 2021 we knew that we had to be online from the beginning, and the students were creating already amazing videos and activities and games about space exploration, about what is light, wonderful experiments with explosions and everything that you like. And part of this has been also featured at the University of Dundee Festival of the Future, which is also online now. Okay, so after so many interruptions and things and technical issues, and coming now to the end. So where are we going now? So first of all, the Neon Digital Art Festival is coming soon. And then we are going to be exposing our Reading Between the Lines work, including the artwork, and also public engagement talks by the scientists in the group at the Mills Observatory. And there are many things that we can continue working on. So there is a lot of projects that could be starting and continuing, like with our collaboration we have with the AGCAD. And I wanted also to point out the work by Lucy Smith. I have some of her artwork there, who is trying to capture part of the beauty of physics into her artwork. And that was also a very inspiring thing, because it has a project that is called The Mirror in the Mirror. And this is not only a piece of music that is called The Mirror in the Mirror by Arvo Pärt, but there is also a book by Michel Ende. And at the end, a mirror in a mirror is also something like a soap bubble or a Fabry-Perot interferometer. So there are indeed a lot of places where you can connect art and physics and be able to talk about it and to be able to present things in a different way. So this is what we are also trying to do with our Stellar Nursery project that includes Reading Between the Lines and many other things. So thank you very much.